I'm gonna have to make a bracket that comes around here. That way so we get the vertical strength and the front and back strength. Top shock mount, somewhere around here. Well, the last clip of you saw, or whatever, the last video, whatever, I don't know, I'm so far behind on editing. It's been 5 months since I've recorded anything. So it was like the end of winter. It's like the middle of summer now. It's really hot. This shed didn't even exist in the last clip or whatever that I've edited. Anyway, well, there's a shed now, and there's tires here from all the past projects and stuff so far. I was thinking, why do I want to buy another sprocket for the transmission side of the Polaris when I literally already have a rear sprocket on the rear tire of the motorcycle? And this is the front tire of the motorcycle, rear tire of the motorcycle, and those two ones are the front tires of the Polaris. So my job right now is pull that rear sprocket off of the rear tire and see how well that fits. Stand, which is covered in disgusting, oh, that's awful. Oh, that sprocket is a lot smaller than I had hoped. Castle nut. So we need to pull out the rear axle. The tire will be out, and then it looks like we have, what is that, 5 bolts on the sprocket? How does that come out? Imagine a good hammer. Maybe wash my hands and get some gloves too. This is gonna be messy. Okay, gloves and hammer. Let's make sure wherever I'm hitting is not into something else. Nice. There we go. Yeah, for anybody who feels bad about me taking apart this stuff and whatever, quite literally, it would cost way more money to like actually get this like road worthy than it would be to just doing what I'm doing. This tire is flat, like flat here. So both front and rear brakes, tires flat. I needed all new plastic. It needed front suspension, or at least a rebuild on them. There was a lot more that needed to be done. If you become a Patreon member, you get the full spreadsheets of literally every file that I have. You get my project schedule, when everything is getting done, when it was done, how much everything costs. You get the price breakdowns of everything, literally everything I buy. At the end of every video, there's a running total where I just tell you to that video time how much I spent on everything, excluding tools, but including any extra parts I buy, including the initial purchase, the entire purchase. That way, so you get a general idea how much everything costs. Like I said, I don't include tools because I don't know what you have, you don't know what I have. It just makes more sense. As a Patreon member, you get access to Discord, you get everything. If you click on the link in the description, I have a full description of everything that is included. So go take a look, please. Helps with this kind of stuff. And if you don't like that I did something the way I did, well, you can complain to me either in the comments or on there. I'm not gonna lie, a little bit of money from Patreon is, I don't know, I'm not saying it's a bribe. Anyway, let's get this rear sprocket off. That's weird. The actual threads that were on that fell. Okay, well, here's our sprocket. Nice. That was not what I was expecting. Oh. The heck is this? Well, whatever it is, it goes there. Oh, is this like a dampeners or something? Okay, where's that other bolt? Ah, there it is. Well, that's what we're after. Size 43 tooth. Put these back on there. Oops, so those things don't fall out like that. It's got a slot cut out in it. Lines up with one of the sides. It keeps it from rotating. This guy, so these things go in those little slots. I didn't even see that there before. Goes in there like that. Interesting. Okay. So this guy, where's the castle nut? There it is. Put that back on there. I'll have to get a new cotter pin because that's not on there. Good, we got a brake disc there. So that's what we are after. Let's see how this fits up on the rear transmission. I should actually clean this first. Yeah, that's nasty. So I've created a list of things that we need to do to make sure everything on this project gets done in a reasonable manner, in the right order, to make sure everything gets put together the right way without like any oversights. Will there be oversights? Undoubtedly. That list on my phone is right here. The thing that we're going to be doing right after this, talking about this list, is figuring out spots for this front suspension, making sure that we have mounting locations for it, making sure that we can account for where the steering rack is going to go, making sure we don't have too much toe, too much camber, too much caster, all those things, making sure we have mounting points for all of it, and that we have adjustability for all of it. After that, we need to make sure that we have good rear motor mounts. Because the front suspension is going to have to mount to the cage for the motor, the front suspension is dependent on the rear motor mount's location and how we can adjust that. Also, what hinges on that, no pun intended, is the chain tensioner. The rear transmission is fixed, it can't be moved forward or back. We can put some chain tensioners in there around the chain to make sure it's guided, or chain guides, whatever. But the main thing that's going to be tensioning the chain between the motor and the rear transmission is pivoting along the front motor mount and adjusting the rear motor mount up and down so the tension in the chain can be maintained. And then obviously we need to put the chain on, make sure that all fits. We need to put some jack shaft stuff in there, make sure that all fits, make sure it can be tensioned by those rear motor mounts. Then we're going to throw all the electronics back on. We're going to make sure the engine still spins up and everything with it in this weird new chassis and everything. And I can tell you, I'm looking at it right now, it looks pretty good. A little sneak of information there. And then once we have all that in, then we're going to put in the steering rack. Since we've already accounted for the steering rack, hopefully it should fit right up. I've done some preliminary measurements that we're also going to cover here in a second and make sure that it will fit, hopefully. And then since the front steering is in, all the electronics in, we can actually probably start this up and move it backwards and forwards. I mean, the chain's on, it's got steering, and we should be able to do that stuff. But there's a critical thing we overlooked there. We wouldn't have brakes yet. So right then, we need to start looking at brakes. We need to fix up and reinstall the front brakes, which are good. The rear brake, which is attached to the transmission for some reason on the Sportsman 500, it needs a whole new brake caliper and rotor, and it's gone. It never had one. Well, it had the caliper, the rotor's never been there. The caliper's broken regardless, so that needs to be fixed regardless. Then we need to make sure all of the lights and electrical systems are all good after we put it on the brakes and everything. And then we're probably gonna give it a test drive. I mean, heck, everything's running on it, so why not give it a test drive? And then, sadly, we need to tear it apart. We need to make sure things are painted. We need to check all that stuff. And while we're at it, maybe a little bit after, it needs new tires. It needs them pretty badly. And from there, we'll figure out any other things that aren't working. Somewhere in between that, we're gonna need like the mount, the pedals and everything. I mean, obviously there's little things I'm skipping out on here that we're gonna have to do in between. In general, that's our list of things that we need to get done. So now that's discussed, let's look at the front suspension. So we're back to this. Come down here. So, since we want to put a rack and pinion right here, we need the arms of the rack to reach to the control arms on the left and right wheel hub. So let's grab the wheel hub that was on the left side originally that we're going to be putting on the right hand side. Things are heavy. This is the right hand side. I grabbed the wrong one. And the reason why I knew which one was which is because this guy originally went wheel out this way with this little control arm facing backwards. The new way is that the wheel is on this side, control arm is facing front. That's important because this hole right here needs to line up with this plate here. That way, so the rack and pinion is all one straight line. God, I really should script this kind of stuff. Basically, we want the pivots on the rack to be around the same area as the pivots for the arm here on both sides. So rightish, around here-ish, around here-ish. An inch or two is not going to change too much. Really depends on your geometry of suspension and everything, and your control arms and everything. And that's so you don't want any bumps here. I'm going to try and find the smallest rack that fits in this area, that has the right arm length to reach here. In short, I'm going to put this thing on this side, and we're basically just going to see how far this hole is from the center. And we're going to double that length, and that's going to give us this hole on the right hand side to this hole on the left hand side. Then I'll know the dimension that I have to look for when buying a new rack. Okay, so hopefully you see an issue right now. Well, there's a few issues. To start with, look where the top of this shock is sitting right now. That is a bad spot. Bad because we have to make a mounting bracket to it. That's engine right there, obviously. There's nothing for this thing to mount to anywhere around here. So I have to make some kind of bracket that comes down from here and around for strength to grab onto this. Because clearly, this guy that originally had the top mounts and everything can't phase through the engine and sit there and hold that. I'm going to have to trim this at some distance here, make sure I have this measurement as best as I possibly can, and then make sure that that is the same measurement across, make a mount like there-ish somewhat. It's gonna be really close to the engine, and then make a mount from like here-ish to here to back. I'm going to show you close up. Yeah, you can see what I'm talking about here. There's no mount points over here. The closest one is over here. There's one way up here, so I'm gonna have to make a bracket that comes around here, round to back, and then something to add a vertical strength, so from here down. That way, so we get the vertical strength and the front and back strength. Actually, at that angle, it needs to be around. What I'm looking at is this disc, or the brake rotor. So we need that to be in like vertically this way. If it's anywhere that way, we know that this top part is too far towards the engine. And if it's too far this way, well, you can see that would make our tire sit outwards. So we want it in line. And that puts us right around there-ish. Now, the good news is that this is pretty darn close in line. Ooh, grease. Ugh. This is pretty darn close in line to this front mount. I'm going to measure from here to center, double that distance, and that should give us the left and right hand side, so I know the full distance we need the border. So I measured this off camera so I can get a really good measurement, but from there to here, dead on is almost perfectly 14 inches. Like I said, I measured this off camera. It's pretty much dead 14 inches, and you can see it lines up pretty darn close to the center of the oil filter too. So we know the engine is centered on the frame, so we need a rack that supports 28 inches. So I'm gonna go online, I'm gonna find one, I'm gonna buy one. When I was looking for rack and pinions and stuff, there's a handful that are for go-karts, and they're around like the 270 millimeter range, the 300 millimeter range. They're all somewhere in that. They're built questionably. The reviews on them are usually pretty bad, let's put it that way. There's some that are from Go Power Sports that are supposed to be really good. I know there's one like upgraded one that Go Power Sports sells that's supposed to be pretty good. What am I talking about? Think of a vehicle that lasts a long time, that people neglect, and that always has good steering. Well, I shouldn't say always, but the steering lasts. And that's a golf cart. Golf cart steering is really cheap online. There's all sorts of different steering wheels, steering columns, different steering racks, and for all the different sizes, because there's so many brands of golf carts. We all know that people pretty much abuse those golf carts. We can see like the jumps that they do on them. And for the unfortunate golf cart that doesn't last, there's plentiful amounts of cheap rack and pinions that are on Amazon and eBay and other places online. The one I'm gonna get for this one, and I'll put that on the screen if I find it. But yeah, it should be a good one, and that's what we're gonna get. So click order on that, and let's get it here. I'm gonna measure this hole real quick. 9.97. I would bet that this is a hair short of a 10 mil hole, if not a 10 mil hole. Actually, you know, there's a much easier way of figuring this out. Let's find the original that went on this. And it's down there. And won't you believe it, that's like the most inaccessible thing to possibly get to. Ouch. This went to the center of the original steering, and this goes right there. Oh, yuck. Oh, whatever. Yep, that's the guy. Tight. Pull it out. There we go. That is 9.95, 9.94. Okay, basically the exact same size as the hole that we measured. So let's talk about the geometry of this a little bit. The top, all of this is pretty much going to stay the same way that it is. I might see if there's some way I can flip this coil the other way around. That way, so we give ourselves more clearance at the top. See how this coil is much wider at the top than it is at the bottom. I don't know why particularly it is that way, or if it needs to stay wider part at the top, but it'd give us more engine clearance if we flip that the other way around. If this is too far to the right, it means our tire is sitting too much this way. If this is too much this way, that means our tire is going to be too much out. So it's going to be riding too much on the outside. If it's back, too much on the inside. We want to find that sweet spot of basically about right there-ish. Give this house a little bit of gap there. That way so we're riding pretty flat on the bottom. I do want to build in some adjustment just in case I mess up, which is inevitable. We want to make sure that this thing isn't too far back and not too much forward. That's more about driving characteristics and how it lands on bumps and everything. So I do want to give it a little bit of caster on that, but not too much. Once again, I'll see if I can build some adjustability into that. The camber, like I said, I want to be a little bit adjustable so we can sit flat. The toe, well, that's going to be determined by getting a rack in and getting adjustment screws like that, right? So we're not too far out, we're not too far in from right and left tire from each other. But yeah, otherwise, this looks like it will just fit right up. But even after the camber, caster, toe, all that fun stuff, one thing that we didn't really note is where the top part of this is going to be mounted. We were talking about mounting it this way and this way, but up and down certainly matters a lot too, because if it's too high, then the whole front's going to sit too low when it's squished. And if it's too low, then the whole front's going to sit too high, even after all the weight's put onto the shock. So somehow I'm going to have to figure out where the top of this is going to sit. Now I know that we have the original bar right here. That was the original vertical mount that I'm attached right here. And then since right here, those two chop marks are where this is chopped here and the other side here. So I know generally how to measure where the top of this sat, even though it's already been cut out. But we added a bunch of weight in a really weird spot. Idea is we're gonna have to make some kind of mounting bracket that is adjustable for height. Maybe I'll have to make it out of some thin piece of wood or whatever. I don't know yet, but we're gonna have to figure out with all this weird weight combo and with the weight that's gonna go on this about where this should sit with all this new weight. Because we can't just assume it's the regular old height. Because if we assume that and there's more weight, it's gonna sit lower, which means we actually need to put this lower to counteract all that. That way so the frame sits higher, blah, 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 blah. Boring stuff. You'll see me do it, but we need to account for that. So let's take a measurement about where it was before. This cut right here, 2 1/4 inches. Hold up. So this top cut here is approximately, I'm gonna call that about an inch difference. That looks about right. Down here from the top of that cut, 12 inches almost exactly. So now we're up to 13 inches above the top of this mount right in here. That is approximately 5 inches from the bottom, from the frame right there to the top of the engine mount there. 5 plus 13, that gives us 18 inches from the bottom of the frame. This thing should be mounted, and I'm just gonna imaginarily hang that right there. That's about the same height. We're just estimating right now. 18 is to right around here. So right now we're actually sitting about 2 inches higher than it's supposed to be. This top bushing and everything should be sitting about right here. And it looks like it's already really that much at an angle just because this has to compress some under all the weight. So idealistically, even though this is where we're supposed to be mounting it, we should probably mount it about right here. I don't know the spring rate. We could actually calculate this distance. If we knew the spring rate of this and the weight of this engine and minus the weight of the old engine that sat roughly here-ish, a little bit further back, we can actually calculate the distance that we need to drop it by. I'll do some paper math, Googling about the weights of all this stuff, but I think in the end we're just gonna have to put a strip of metal in and then just test, see if that works. If it doesn't, we just gotta remake it. Oh yeah, we're also gonna have to order some bushings because that and yeah, those are bad bushings, so let's order some of those too. After taking some measurements, this tube here and this tube here are 34.5 millimeters, which is pretty close to 1 3/8 inch. This tube here, which goes all the way down to over here, is about 38 millimeter, which is pretty darn close to 1.5 inches. If I want to get any like split color tube clamps, whatever you want to call them, those are the 2 sizes that I think I'm gonna have to get. If I want something that I can clamp around that tube, and this tube here. That way so we can make some triangulation so we can mount the top shock mount somewhere around here, because I want to make some cross bracing between here, down to here, to over here, so we'll give ourselves a nice structure. Only thing is we have to do clamps, because if I weld to this, then if we have a strap that goes all the way around here and everything and into this brace, we can't take the motor back out again, which is something that I want to be able to still do in case we have to for some reason. I hope we don't have to, but in case, I want to plan for that. I'm glad you've made it to the end of this video, because this is where we're currently at. And I say that because, well, now you've caught up. All these past videos have been in the past, and I've been editing to catch up everything. And, well, now this is like today. Every single other video that I've had has already been edited and scheduled. As of this video, they've already been released, except for, well, I guess you're watching this video, so it would have been released. It's the last one that I have of this project edited, because it's the last thing I've done on this project, because, well, you're caught up. The next video is going to be an in-between project video, and it's going to be about, the video is going to be about CAD, CAM, and your post-processor, and that mainly pertains to like CNC operations. So it's not necessarily how-to, but it's more of an explanation video for people who don't know how to use a CNC machine or what that even applies. There's a lot of videos on people explaining how 3D printers work and how you can get that ready, but it's a different process for CNC. And so I have a project ready for you guys. You can actually see it behind me. That's the final look of it, you know, minus some things. I'm cutting off a little bit so you don't see all of it, you know, spoilers. But next video is gonna be about CAD, CAM, and your post-processor. And then after that, that's gonna be just a one video explanation for people when they have a question about such and such, I can refer them to that. Right after that video, I'm finally going to tell you about the Nissan Leaf project. And it was the most ambitious project I've done to date. And coincidentally, it was the very first project that I started recording. But I really do hope you enjoy it, because I spent thousands of dollars on it. I don't think you're going to be ready for what that actually entails. I've made some pretty good progress on it, and I started that project a year and a half ago. And so I got a few episodes to catch you up on that. Then I'm gonna catch up on the project that you just saw this video about, on this project that's behind, and then we'll back and forth between the projects I get done on the Nissan Leaf and this one. Thank you for watching. A lot of talk, blah, 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 and I hope you stick around and watch them, because it's been a lot. You can subscribe by clicking the link like right here-ish. And then I have, 2 other videos right here. There's a playlist for what I've already done in the series, and then there's also the video that YouTube thinks you're gonna like. Hopefully